afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Veronica Rivera, and I'm coming from the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. The title of my research project this summer is Decomposing the Self, Embodied Imagery, Theatrical Space and Gender in the Performance of Teresa Hernandez. I will talk about the concepts I'm using in my title as well as the artists I'll be working on, but first it's important to mention some aspects of the country Puerto Rico. As highlighted in the article wrote by Vivian Martinez Tavares, she is a Cuban scholar who by the time she wrote this article, she had lived in the island for 5 to 6 months doing research. Therefore, she can give an insight into the Puerto Rican scene, both from an outside but also an inside point of view. The first issue that she highlights is the issue of identity. Because of our past relation to Spain and our current relation to the United States, the identity of Puerto Ricans are embedded with aspects of these two countries. And because of our commonwealth with the United States, Puerto Rico cannot trade with other countries in the world. Everything happens throughout the United States. Therefore, when compared to other countries in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico has a very modern economy, which has its pros and cons that we will not discuss here, but it's important to mention this to understand the context and background in which the work of Teresa develops. About cultural characteristic, Martinez Tavares highlights the absence of colectivos de teatro or theater groups in where artists can share, learn, and collaborate in productions. And also there is an absence of a specialized and rigorous theater critique, which is particularly negative in the perception that the Puerto Rican audience may have of theater, especially the experimental theater. Despite all these complexities, there are a few colectivos as well as independent artists who has developed their work, and one of them is Teresa Hernandez. She is a writer, director, and performer of her independent work since 1991, both in Puerto Rico's commercial and experimental art scenes. She explores with space, body, text, costume, and multimedia to expose the anxieties of everyday life in the Puerto Rican society, investigating issues of gender, class, and race. The specific performance I'll be working on is titled Nada que ver, Composiciones Escénicas sobre el Yo. Now, there is no literal translation to English for the phrase nada que ver, but in Spanish we use it when we want to refer to something that doesn't have to do necessarily with X other thing. So if you take a look at the second part of the title that can be translated as staged compositions of the self, I believe that what the artist is telling us is that these are different explorations of myself as a Puerto Rican woman, a woman artist, and a mother, but they are not necessarily related to each other. The performance is a very visual piece that combines monologues, acting, and dancing techniques, as well as multimedia and carefully selected props and costumes that are central in the creation of images in the theatrical space. The materials I've been using are a video interview of Teresa recorded while she was working on Nada que ver, and a video documentation of the performance itself, both available at the Hemispheric Institute Digital Video Library, which is an open source. And I also have field notes from the second act Parada that she performed at my university this year. Now, performance, it's an ephemeral art, so this means that it doesn't leave an object for further study. Now, how something that it's intended to happen and then disappear can be studied through videos, as I claim in my research project? Well, because through different forms of embodiment, what the artist is doing is creating a series of images within the theatrical space that serves us as a frame, and images is something that can be captured through photo and video cameras. Therefore, by understanding the embodied images that Teresa performs, we can understand the gender discourses that she is also embodying. Now, gender, according to Judith Butler, it's perform. This is that regardless the physical sex of a person, it's the reiteration of social norms what construct gender. So that said, I found very interesting a living language dictionary that was compiled by the NYU Student Center for the LGBTQ community, in where they embrace the idea of gender terminology as something that is constantly changing. And I believe that they are also embracing the idea of gender as something as complex as the ways that exist to perform it. Therefore, in my project, I will go beyond the dichotomy of masculine and feminine, and I will concentrate in the feminine of the gender issues. This is because the work of Teresa only has woman characters. Therefore, thinking of gender issues as something between masculine and feminine implies that we need to imagine a masculine figure that she isn't embodying. So what I will do is put in conversation two concepts of femininity that she is embodying to talk about gender issues in her work. The first character or feminine concept is Ruby Encantada, and Ruby Encantada is a woman who lives in Prusa, which are the initials to Puerto Rico, United States of America. Now, Ruby defines herself as an actress. Now, Teresa, the artist, defines herself as an artist of the scenario, and this is to avoid the definitions and the expectations that comes with the concepts actress, dancer, or dramaturge, because she takes techniques of all these to construct her performances. So by having a character that is defined as an actress, and a character that every time that moves strikes another pose, what Teresa is doing is embodying the stillness or embodying the norm through Ruby Encantada. So as an experimental artist, what Teresa is constantly doing is breaking that norm, breaking apart the terms to explore with them. Now, if you take a look at the second character that I call the woman in the act Parada, she is not moving either, but suddenly she does. So in a way, she is breaking the norm, breaking the form. There is a force behind her that is trying to push her forward until she is able to go through the scenario. And there is something behind her, something that she cannot get rid of, and this is represented by the fabric. So she managed to deal with it. In a moment in the performance, she gets rid of that dress, but the dress doesn't disappear from the spectator's eye. Instead, it's going to be hung up in the middle of the scenario. So you're going to have the dress representing the stillness or the norm, and this is going to be contrasted with the performer who is now embodying an experimental dance, and this is like the freedom of breaking that norm. If we see these two characters compared, we can see that they are both women, and this is represented especially by the clothes they are wearing. These are feminine figures, but they are different not only because of the way they look, although they're women, they are different because of the way they move, as we just saw. So, that said, Teresa in the interview explains that she has never identified herself with masculine concepts or feminine concepts. And what fascinates her about the experimental art is that she can break apart those concepts, she can explore with them, and it's precisely the discussion and the searching for definitions what drives her creations. Therefore, I conclude that by decomposing herself as an artist and presenting these explorations through these two characters, Teresa is also negotiating two forms of femininity. Thank you.